Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I was gonna upload something different on the channel today, but I know that no matter what I put out, all the comments are just gonna be people asking me about my opinions on the Switch 2. In case you don't know, the Switch 2 got announced today. I wasn't very surprised to see it because there was a bunch of leaks telling us that it would be announced sometime in January. And we also knew that it was most likely just going to be a slightly bigger Switch, which is exactly what it is. Now, that might be selling it short. It might be a much better console than the Switch. We don't know anything about it yet, but my hopes is that it just has more processing power and that it's a better console, because if I'm going to be completely honest, I think the Switch has kind of been a garbage console. The games on it have been pretty good. Like, I think we've had many good years of games, but the Switch itself as a console did not impress me. I didn't like how it wasn't able to run properly at 60 FPS, how it kept overheating in certain conditions. Anyone remember playing Tree Houses with those fire tiles on the ground and how the Switch would overheat? Kind of funny. So I'm hoping that Nintendo has learned from their mistakes and that they're giving us a better console this time around. It sure looks very fancy. I think it probably will be backwards compatible. I think our old capture cards will work on it. And I also read somewhere that it's going to be like much more connected online, so maybe Nintendo are actually going to get decent online servers for once. That would be something, wouldn't it? So yeah, I am excited for the Switch 2. I'm glad that it's coming out. I think maybe the Super Switch would have been a better title for it, but hey, it is what it is, as Donlot often says. So, what I'm mostly excited about, and what I'm going to be focusing the most on in this video, is that they announced the Direct, and they announced it quite far ahead. Now, some people looked at this and they were like, "Oh, cool, the 4th of February." No. You gotta remember, guys, the Americans write their date wrong. So it is, in fact, the 2nd of April, not the 4th of February, which a lot of Europeans thought it was. And yes, sorry, Americans, you are objectively wrong. But that aside, we are 2.5 months away from this Direct, so it's going to be quite a long wait. I do think that the likelihood that we might get some kind of Fire Emblem trailer before then, maybe a teaser trailer, it's definitely not small, but I think it's probably likely that we'll get our first look at the new Fire Emblem game during this Direct. I think it would be very strange if they didn't announce a new Fire Emblem game together with like their flagship games. Like, I know Fire Emblem is not the biggest industry for Nintendo, but it is definitely not considered like a small industry either. And we know that when a new console comes out, they often tend to announce a whole bunch of games for it, just like they did with Three Houses. So I think it's very likely we'll see the new Fire Emblem game on this particular Direct. I would be very, very surprised if we didn't. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about, if it turns out to be the long-awaited remake, which games would I be the most hyped for? And if it's not a remake, what do I think they should do? Or what would I be the most excited about, personally? So that's what I'm going to be focusing on in this video. So let's just talk about remakes for a little bit. We have, of course, it's been speculated for years at this point that we're going to get a remake. Everyone is thinking the FE4 remake. I have my reasons for thinking that's not going to happen, but I could very well be wrong. But listing the remakes in order of like least hyped to most hyped, there was a time when I really thought Atelius remake was coming, Path of Radiance plus Radiant Dawn. The reason behind this was there was like a planned Fire Emblem convention in Japan where the voice actor of Ike was going to be the host, but I think it got cancelled due to, you know, the thing that I can't talk about on YouTube, you know, 2020, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so for the longest time I actually thought that a Path of Radiance / Radiant Dawn remake was coming. I think it might be likely that one was being worked on, but it got scrapped. In case you guys don't know, we've gotten confirmation that a supposed Fire Emblem remake was in the works, but it got scrapped. Someone who was deep in with Nintendo said as much. And I think it was for the 3DS, actually, which is kind of interesting. So, actually, maybe it wasn't the Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn remake. That wouldn't make sense timeline-wise, but who knows at this point. I don't think the Atelius remake is coming. Obviously, I'd be hyped for it, but it is lowest on my list of potential remakes. And then, of course, we have FE6. There are many reasons as to why an FE6 remake would make a lot of sense. The primary reason being is that Roy never got localized in Europe, and he's a very popular lord due to Super Smash. I think that an FE6 remake would be really cool. They could throw in FE7 in there too if they want to do like a double game. I think it may be more wise to just focus on a single game, but I wouldn't mind if they also threw in FE7 there. So Obviously, like, I'd be very hyped. It's my favorite game, but I don't necessarily think it'd be great for the series to do a remake of FE6 as the flagship game for the Switch 2. And then, of course, we have the FE4 remake. This is the one that so many people thought we were getting for so long, and I thought too until I saw Speedwing here's video talking about how the guy who leaked Engage probably just saw Emblem Sigurd and just assumed that an FE4 remake was being worked on. However, the FE4 remake would be the one that I would be most hyped for, and the reasons for that is I think it's one of the greatest stories ever told. And if we got that with Echo's presentation, I think it would probably be an incredibly soulful game. Just imagining the cutscenes, the updated graphics, I would absolutely love to see it happen. I think FE4 is also a very clunky, outdated game that is badly in need of a remake. So this would be the one that I would be the most hyped for. But what if it's not a remake? What if the next Fire Emblem game is not a remake? What would I personally be most hyped for? Well, this may sound kind of weird, but if I was in charge, I would probably do something like announcing a sequel or prequel to Three Houses. I know that's going to make a lot of you guys groan. You're going to be like, oh, why would you, like, do you want another Three Houses game? I'm not saying it has to play like Three Houses, but I'm saying Fire Emblem has never gone back and done like a sequel or a prequel many games later, right? Usually we get the prequels or sequels in pairs, like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, FE6, FE7, FE4, FE5. But I think, considering how popular Three Houses was, I think if they announced a prequel or a sequel to Three Houses set in the Phone Lad universe, I think it would blow the roof off the house. Three Houses is one of the most popular Fire Emblem games in the fandom, and I think if they actually were to announce a remake of that, it would be absolutely huge. Not a remake, but a sequel or prequel. I think a lot of people would really like that. I don't want it to play like Three Houses, but I wouldn't mind another game set in the Three Houses universe. However, what I think is most likely to happen, and what I personally hope the most will happen, is just a brand new Fire Emblem game. Not a sequel, not a prequel, not a remake, just a brand new Fire Emblem game. And I would be absolutely beside myself if we could go back to sort of like a sprite-like era. Something similar to Octopath Traveler, with graphics like these. I know a lot of people would probably feel like this would be a step back, but I disagree. I think that sprite-based Fire Emblem was when it was at its peak, and just because we're getting a new console with improved graphics doesn't mean that we can't get a sprite-based game. I personally think that taking Fire Emblem back to sprites, but just making them really gorgeous, would be incredibly cool. And that's personally what I'm hoping for the most with the new Fire Emblem game. I'm hoping we get something slightly darker than Engage, something a bit more badass, less VTuber aesthetics, less flashy colors and bright lights, and something a little bit more dark and violent. Doesn't need to have like 18 plus themes in it or anything like that, but I want a Fire Emblem game that takes itself seriously and tries a little bit harder to establish itself. That would personally make me very excited. So it's an exciting time for sure. I mean, with the Direct coming out in April, we all have something to look forward to, which I think is very good for us all. Like that makes us hyped. You know, we don't have to go around wondering when is the Direct going to happen. I think it's good that Nintendo is actually announcing it pretty far in advance so people can prepare for it. I personally hate it when, you know, we're all going around wondering when the next Direct is going to happen, and they, like, drop it on us with, like, a 2-day notice. Very annoying for me, who very often would like to, like, take time off work to actually be around to react to the Direct, because they tend to air it very early in the morning during work hours for some weird reason. I'm not really sure why. So I really appreciate that they're doing it this way, so, you know, I can take time off and actually be around for it. Because I do think this Direct is going to be massive. I think they're going to unveil a lot of games, and it's going to be a ton of hype, not just for Fire Emblem, but for every single franchise. I mean, we don't often get the release of a new console like this. This is very rare. And if you guys think back to the Switch era and how much hype was around that, I mean, I'm excited to see it again. I really am. And hopefully, Nintendo will have learned from their past mistakes, and they will give us a console that isn't dog shit. You know, I don't think that's too much to ask for. So, yeah. I think those are all the thoughts that I have. To quickly summarize my thoughts, I am excited for the Switch 2. I hope that Nintendo has learned from their mistakes, and I hope that it's better than the console that we got. And if it is a new Fire Emblem game being unveiled, I hope that it's not a remake, but if it is a remake, FE4 would make me the most hyped. But personally, I would want either like a prequel or sequel to Three Houses, or a brand new Fire Emblem game. That's pretty much what I have to say about this. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, what do you guys think? Are you excited for this? Do you have any fears regarding the Switch 2? Do you think Nintendo is going to mess up somehow? I'd love to hear your answers in the comment section below. Yeah, let me know. Do you think we're going to get a Fire Emblem in April? Surely we will, right? Or do you think we're actually going to get a teaser trailer before that? Anything could happen. It's a pretty exciting time. I think 2025 is going to be a pretty cool year, personally. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tim Manx. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.